Hong Kong. Thousands of black-clad anti-government protesters demonstrated at Hong Kong's International Airport on Friday, taking aim at both a global transit hub and the city's closely guarded reputation for order and efficiency. The protest in the airport's arrivals hall, which is planned to last through Sunday, came as Hong Kong reeled from its worst political crisis since Britain handed the former colony back to China in 1997, and less than a week after protests and a general strike caused chaos in the city and led to 148 arrests. The airport protest began in the early afternoon, as demonstrators in black t-shirts and face masks nearly filled the cavernous arrivals hall, chanting, "Hong Kongers, keep going," a rallying cry for the 2-month-old protest movement. "You've arrived in a broken, torn-apart city, not the one you have once pictured," read a pamphlet that protesters offered to arriving travelers. "Yet for this Hong Kong, we fight. We shall never surrender." As of Friday night, the demonstration remained peaceful, and there had been no reports of arrests or disruptions of flights. Protesters were careful to leave a path clear for travelers, some of whom recorded the demonstration on their phones or helped themselves to pamphlets. The protests in Hong Kong began 2 months ago, in opposition to a bill now suspended that would allow extraditions to mainland China, where the courts are controlled by the ruling Communist Party. It has since expanded to include a number of other demands for greater democracy. In recent days, mainland Chinese officials have issued stern warnings to protesters about the risks of continuing their campaign. On Friday night, the Chinese government struck at Hong Kong's flagship carrier, Cathay Pacific, some of whose employees were reported to have supported the protests. China's Civil Aviation Authority demanded that the airline bar staffers who have supported illegal assemblies or acts of violence from working on flights to mainland China. A Cathay pilot was reported to have been among dozens of people charged with rioting in connection with a recent protest, and more than 1,500 of its employees called in sick as part of the general strike on Monday, according to a union representative. What's going on in Hong Kong? Here's how the protests have evolved. Many of the street protests in recent weeks have ended with the Hong Kong police firing tear gas and rubber bullets in clashes with demonstrators. A hardcore contingent of young protesters has increasingly embraced violent tactics, arguing that the government has ignored more peaceful displays. Protesters said they did not expect the police to use tear gas against them at the airport. As of early evening, the police presence in the arrivals hall was light. Sam Yang, 45, a Taiwanese businessman, waded through the crowd after arriving on a flight from the mainland Chinese city of Chengdu. He said that his first order of business would be changing out of the black t-shirt that he happened to be wearing. "Obviously I've never run into any protests. Only 9 Klansmen showed up. They were hemmed in by more than 700 law enforcement officers and were easily drowned out by the shouts and chants of the hundreds who had come out to oppose the march." When the rally ended uneventfully, it seemed that the potential for serious violence had passed. 2 days later, the tornadoes hit. It was almost as if it was a metaphor of a divine nature, said the Reverend Renard Allen Jr., the pastor of St. Luke Missionary Baptist Church, one of the larger churches in Dayton. That tornado outbreak on May 27 devastated suburban communities and littered city streets with fallen trees. For weeks, residents lifted branches off stranger-saw homes and served meals at temporary shelters. I think the tornadoes really brought the community together in a really bizarro kind of way, said Shelley Dickstein, Daytona's city manager. We were very much still in the process of healing from the tornadoes when the mass shooting hit. When Ms. Whaley was elected to the city commission at age 29, Dayton, like much of the industrial Midwest, was struggling to recover from a prolonged decline. Over the decades, factories and Fortune 500 companies had left Dayton. So had nearly half its residents. But during her nearly 6 years as mayor, Ms. Whaley has presided over a downtown revival. Buildings that had long been vacant are being redeveloped. Some neighborhoods that had been emptied are seeing an infusion of new residents. And during this time, Ms. Whaley has steadily built a larger profile for herself, taking on a leadership role in a national Mayorsa organization, speaking openly about the toll of the opioid crisis on the state and briefly seeking the Democratic nomination for governor. People see that she is striving for a higher political level, said Gary Lightsoul, her predecessor as mayor, who said Ms. Walia's ambitions have been seen by some as overshadowing the concerns in some neighborhoods. I don't dislike her, he added. But, I do not trust her. Still, among mayors across the country, Ms. Whaley has become something of a celebrity. She is just so smart, she is so accessible, she is so real. Like, what you see is what you get, said Christine Hunchofsky, the mayor of Parkland, Florida, which endured the unwelcome spotlight last year when 17 people, including 14 students, were killed at a high school in her city. She is definitely someone other mayors look up to and learn from. But on Sunday, it was Ms. Hunchofsky who had guidance for Ms. Whaley. While Dayton police officers were still outside Ned Pepper's bar collecting evidence and methodically combing the vast crime scene, Ms. Hunchofsky texted words of encouragement. Buddy Dyer, the mayor of Orlando, Florida, the site of the Pulse nightclub shooting in June 2016 that left 49 people dead and more than 50 wounded, called Ms. Whaley. So did Bill Peduto, the mayor of Pittsburgh, where 11 people were killed in a synagogue last October. At a vigil on Sunday, Ms. Whaley talked about joining an unfortunate fraternity of mayors whose cities had been the site of mass shootings. The crowd roared with approval for the mayor. A moment later, they drowned out the Republican governor, Mike DeWine, imploring him to push for tighter gun laws with chance of do something. Ms. Whaley said in an interview that she was not sure how Mr. DeWine would react. After that I said to him, I am sorry, people are just wound up, she recalled. He said to me, Nan, thoughta as part of the job. Since that vigil, the two have spoken every day, she said. They have effusively complimented each other at news conferences and tried to put on a bipartisan front for gun control proposals. She's done a great job, said Mr. DeWine, who grew up about 20 miles from Dayton. Communities always look for leadership from the mayor when you have a crisis, and she's stepped up. On Tuesday, Mr. DeWine proposed expanding background checks and enacting a version of a red flag law that would allow guns to be seized from people deemed dangerous. But feisty exchanges between Ms. Whaley and President Trump have not made a bipartisan alliance very easy. A red flag gun laws arena airtight. But officials say the AVE saved lives. Before Mr. Trump visited the city on Wednesday, Ms. Whaley said she planned to tell him how unhelpful he has been on gun policy. She also would needle him about mistaking Dayton for Toledo in a national address on Monday about the shooting. After leaving Dayton on Wednesday, Mr. Trump said on Twitter that Ms. Whaley's characterization of his visit was a fraud. For her part, Ms. Whaley said on Thursday that she was relieved he had left town. We've got to get to the work of grieving and bringing our community together, she said. All of the national drama about what President Trump is thinking and what he is not thinking, is not helpful to our community. And there has been no shortage of help needed in Dayton. On Thursday, for Ms. Whaley, this meant a news conference at a Children's hospital, lunch with the governor and her regular appointment with a counselor, which she highlighted on Twitter to emphasize the importance of mental health. Still, officials in Dayton were looking ahead. Plans were already underway, the city manager said, for a New Year's Eve party to bid good riddance to 2019.